Hello and welcome back everybody to the Let's Talk side of the channel, where I sit in a chair and I just simply and calmly talk about things that I really enjoy. And today we're actually going to be talking about something that we've covered many times on this channel, or at least an author that we've covered many times on the channel. Somebody who actually has probably more videos than any other video series that's on this thing besides obviously Hellraiser. And who this would actually be is Maxwell Prince, the man who's behind the Ice Cream Man. And I think at this point everybody can tell just how much I love horror short stories, at least when they're done right. I recently just read something that I thought was going to be really good because it had a lot of really good people backing it. A series called Distillery that didn't really pan out. But when it comes to a good set of short stories and things that actually manage to tie in together, Maxwell Prince is definitely it. This man manages to make everything so separate while also being super unique, and at the same time dropping little Easter eggs while also connecting different storylines to each other in ways that you wouldn't really think that's going to happen. And that's something that actually happens in this book by him that I'm about to cover. Alright, he actually ties the Ice Cream Man into this one in some very strange ways. It's a story that I have not yet covered, and I definitely want to cover some things out of this later on in the future, probably after Halloween and stuff. I just really want to get that video out there, the one that I'm waiting to do. But yes, Maxwell Prince, an absolute mastermind in any kind of horror short stories, and you can definitely tell this man picks a theme and he absolutely runs with it. And what we're going to be talking about today is a book called Ha Ha, featuring this giant clown, and it actually features a bunch of different clowns. And while I'm not really sure if this came out before or in the middle of the Ice Cream Man, it finds very unique ways to kind of tie itself into that, or at least through one of these stories, into one of the more crazier Ice Cream Man stories that I've yet to cover myself. But overall, this book conveys many different emotions, from sad and desperate clowns just kind of losing their jobs, all the way to other clowns who eventually became strippers due to their bipolar mothers not really setting a good example, all the way to really wholesome moments when we see this 9-year-old clown, this woman who used to be a grand part of the circus, who has pretty much lost all faith in humanity, is constantly complaining about prices of groceries and all these different things, until eventually a young ne'er-do-weller comes into our grasp, and while he does scare her, they eventually kind of come to terms with these passing generations, and they do become friends. And it's just a series that I really enjoyed. Actually sat down on Lake Michigan one day and I blew through this entire thing. And I think overall, if you're somebody who does enjoy the Ice Cream Man franchise, this is definitely something that you should be on the lookout for. It's only about 15 bucks, and I think this is the only volume that there is. I'm not sure if there's any more passes with the Ice Cream Man. There's like 10 or maybe even up to 20 different ones at this point. But this one is just a nice thing to kind of sit down, kind of enjoy yourself. And it's not really just set in stone in the horror genre. Like I said, it goes through all these different emotions, and that's what we're going to kind of sit down, and I'm going to break down maybe 2 or 3 different stories from it. And the first one that I'd really like to cover is the very first one, about this clown who basically is completely happy with his life, even though in the beginning when we see his wife and his family and they'll kind of make fun of him for having this job that he has, being a clown at an amusement park. And eventually this place does get shut down, but throughout this entire story he never really breaks, alright? There's scenes where his wife is very openly mocking him to his children. One of his kids actually holds up a prop and she immediately takes it away and tells him, you know, you don't want to become like your father, because your father is a loser. And while that does seem very harsh, the will of this man, the ability to just keep pushing along and be happy throughout this story, one, comes off as a little bit disturbing, comes off as a little bit unhinged, and at the same time gives me hope for myself and be able to keep my shit together in the face of bad news or bad situations. And throughout this story, basically his work does get shut down, and one of his friends actually robs him of his last check. And while one would normally think this to be a bad thing, he realizes that the man only did this so he could support his daughter's ballerina lessons. And this is just going to keep on continuing through the story, until he eventually goes to the bank and is set in the middle of a bank robbery, where these people come in, they tell everybody not to try any kind of funny business, everybody get on the floor, and this is a point in the story where he has finally and absolutely had it, and he tells them no, I would like to stand. And basically they just keep telling him, and he kind of has a little bit of a psychotic break, and he just never really does what they want, until eventually he is shot in the brain, and we are witnessing this bullet pass through his entire head as all these cartoons are pulling out, and somehow this man manages to stay alive, alright? Through this bullet passing through him, he gets to see every shitty moment of his life, but eventually he pulls himself around, and he gets to see the good moments as well, alright? This guy is an absolute trooper, and he basically goes home, and the funniest part about this is now he sees everybody, his family included, as balloon animals. And it's kind of a hard story to explain, but it's definitely one of the better ones out of this. Now for the second one, this one is more just straight up depressing, alright? It's about a young girl who would eventually grow up to be a clown stripper, all due from her mother just giving her some of the worst experiences ever. And what their whole goal is basically this little girl's parents are constantly fighting. Her mother has serious bipolar disorder, as well as some split personality issues, and she's always got this red nose on, and she's always got clown makeup, and it's something that she believes that angels have basically told her to do. And obviously nobody believes her, but her young daughter, and the star of this story, absolutely loves her, and eventually her mom essentially kidnaps her to go off to a circus far, far away from their father. And where the circus would actually be is the one from the very first story, the one where Bozo the Clown, or whatever his name is, essentially worked at. And this mother basically has no idea that this place has been shut down. This takes place just a little after the first one, and throughout this story you're going to get a bunch of traveling hijinks between this little girl and her mom, just kind of absolutely losing her shit as it gets more and deprived and very depressing, as eventually this woman would go on to make her 12-year-old daughter kind of drive across country, not even knowing how, and eventually she would leave her in a hotel room to go out in the nighttime to make some extra money with some most unsavory men. Until eventually there's a point in the story where she believes her daughter is completely asleep, and she actually brings one of these men home, and while they're doing their so-called funny business, kind of honking the horn a little bit if you will, the daughter wakes up and she thinks that this man is hurting her mother, and essentially starts screaming at her until this man slaps her across the face. And with this, the mother basically beats this man to death, and it's kind of a lot to take in. I'm obviously spoiling the shit out of that story. Like I said, there's about 4 or 5 different ones that you can go on and kind of check out for yourself, but from this point on, everything is broken. This little girl realizes that her mom is basically insane at this point. She's extremely unstable and, you know, does need to go to the hospital, but they continue on their journey, alright? And where they end up is this happy fun land that is now closed down, and with this kind of also being a breaking point in this mother's attitude, as well as a breaking point in the rest of her life as a free woman, as the cops eventually do come and eventually do arrest her, would leave this girl to live the life that she does, to continue to try and follow in her mother's footsteps, even wearing the nose that she once does, to eventually go on and become a stripper. And I would probably have to say it's definitely the saddest story out of this entire book. It's the one that's kind of the most unsettling, the one with a lot of shock value to go with it. Most of the stories through here are either just kind of unsettling, but for the most part, a little bit funny, a little bit sad, but mostly funny, or heartwarming, as we would see with the last story. Now, some of the other stories that go on through this book would be one about a mime who eventually would come across this robot that would also eventually come to help his show, until the company kind of comes and tries to steal the robot back. And after that, we get to see a mime go through a bunch of different spy actions, and that story was probably my least favorite out of this entire book, but still one that wasn't the worst thing that I've ever seen in a short story comic book. And I've read a lot of them, and I've come across some absolutely terrible ones. I think I've probably covered some on this channel, you know. Every time I put out a video for Spectro, it's never something that I'm super proud of or anything, just to be honest. There is another story in this about a clown who eventually goes to a children's party, and he is a straight up alcoholic and eventually somehow gets sucked into this balloon, and this is where the ice cream man starts kind of stepping in, where he's selling vanilla ice cream, and these demons inside of this balloon are telling him, you know, they're just saying words like lickety split and things like Rick the Ice Cream Man would say. And the story after that would also have a clown straight up enter into an episode that I've read in the Ice Cream Man, and something that I do want to cover. Maybe it'll be like a 2-part video when I eventually get around to that. But overall, everybody, Haha was a very good comic book. It's something that I very much enjoyed. Like I said, it's a pretty stellar short story thing. I think it's got a lot going for it, and it only makes me want to read more of Maxwell Prince. As like I said, he seems to kind of pick a theme, pick a certain kind of character, and absolutely run with it. Where the Ice Cream Man, we would see Rick the Ice Cream Man, as well as Caleb the Cowboy kind of go on throughout that entire series, and it makes for a very interesting story, as well as just some very good one-off stories. I think Haha does the exact same thing with clowns, and while they're not all totally intersected with each other, well, really they are, because they all eventually do find a way to mention one or the other. It's just something that I really liked, and hopefully I'm not rambling too much, but it is what I wanted to tell you all about next. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Hopefully this wasn't too boring. You should definitely go out and read it for yourself. Add it to your collection. I don't think you'll be disappointed, especially if you're like me and you like your little one-shot short stories and things like that. For reference, I've been reading all throughout the Books of Blood. I've been listening to them at work, and they're very good, all right? Everything Clive Barker puts out seems to be very good. But yes, everybody, thank you so much for watching. I hope this was semi-enjoyable. Hopefully next time I'll have something a little more interesting for these Let's Talk videos. But yeah, it was nice to see you all. Talk to me down in the comments and things like that. Me and somebody else were talking in the comments about maybe having like a horror movie night and a Discord chat or something like that. And I was just wondering if you guys would be into that, if we did it maybe right after Halloween or a little before or something like that. I'm not really sure how to plan it, so hopefully I'll try and figure that out within the next week or two so everybody has a little bit of planning. We can figure out what the best time for that would be. But let me know what you think, alright? I'd love to sit down and have you guys watch the Saint Sinner movie with me. It is not a tenth as good as the comic books. It's actually terrible, but a very fun watch. You know, that's my idea for it, but maybe you guys could put some suggestions out if you're into that kind of thing. And I'll see you all on the next episode of From the Heart.